SMTN.
How's it going, everybody, and welcome to Shin Megami Tensei Network Link 336. I'm your introduction host, Spencer Presley. Just want to give a quick little bit of context for this episode. First off, this was recorded last weekend at Naka Kon 2024 in Kansas. If you were there and somehow listening to this, first off, thank you so much for coming out to the show. I wanted to give a quick little intro. I got a chance to talk to Heather Gonzalez, who is the voice actor for Yukari in Persona 3 Reload. It was an absolute blast. Got to talk with them for a couple of minutes. So I'm going to throw that before the panel, and then we will jump into the main panel, which is all about Persona 3 Reload. There will not be anything too spoilery, but wanted to give you all a quick little intro about everything nonetheless. So, first off, thank you all so much if you went out. It was an absolute blast getting to say hi to so many Atlas fans who not only were there, but were also there all weekend. Also, super big thanks to Heather for talking with me for a few minutes as well. I know your schedule was super busy, so it was really nice to get to sit down and talk with you even for a little bit. And then finally, thank you, of course, to all of the amazing staff at Naka Kon. You guys always are super great in terms of letting us not only come, cover the event, but also host all these great panels and meet so many of you fans. So, without further ado, here's the interview. Enjoy the panel. I will see you all next week. Have a good one, everybody. It's really nice to meet you. I was going to meet you actually at Anime Expo, and then we had the worst luck for scheduling. The Persona 3 panel was at the exact same time as our Atlas panel. And it was really funny because both me and whoever put in the panel submissions for Atlas, we were like, to Anime Expo, was like, is there like anyone you could switch? Because our biggest worry was going to be like, oh my god, no one's going to go to our panel. They're all going to go to your guys' panel because I want to go to your guys, but I don't want to go to my panel. But it was really fun because like that panel was like so crazy booked and everything for it. Thankfully, people didn't want to wait in a horrendously long line. There was
so many people.
A little bit of a less horrendously really long line. But no, I'm talking with Heather Gonzalez. It is really nice to meet you in person. It's very weird talking to you in person because I'm very freshly off my Reload playthrough.
Nice, yeah.
And it's not a happy ending of a game, so it's very fresh off of all the field stuff for it. But yeah, that was like when I had first kind of known of you in terms of like put a face to a name. I've seen a lot of your different roles and stuff from the past with it, but I just kind of wanted to ask like how's it been for you kind of coming off of release and everyone playing, experiencing, and seeing and hearing you as Yukari?
It's been amazing. I mean, I was nervous. Obviously, everyone is when you come for something like a reboot and you're, carrying the torch for someone else. But once it dropped and everyone got to play and see what we did, everyone's been so nice and just really loved the new rendition and got the same feels, if not, in different places sometimes. And it's been great.
Did you have much familiarity with the series before working on it?
I did not. I knew of it, and I knew how big it was and how important it was to people, but I had never played it.
Because I know not all the actors for it were necessarily kind of instructed specifically for voice matching. Was it kind of more of a like, hey, let's play around with it in the audition phase with it, or was it always kind of like, we want this character to sound like her original actor?
It was very much a let's play around with it.
Okay.
We went in, we did a couple of different, things. We have a similar tonality.
Yes.
Which is nice, and I think that helps people ease into it as
For sure.
well.
Well, yeah, and because especially once, because not all the cast was kind of revealed at first, but like it was really interesting, especially after like watching the replay of your guys' panel of like, let's go through a couple of the different members, and you can tell like some a little more than obvious. Like obviously, like Alex and Yuri are very different, but still kind of coming at that like same area. Whereas like Justice is like a really great example of like his version of Shinji is so different, but at that heart they still have that character. I had a really bad experience of I met Justin before playing, and so meeting Justice and seeing how nice and how sweet he is, and then meeting like Shinjiro, I'm like, how were you this person? Like I know you had depth, but it was very funny of like being like, oh okay.
Yeah, it's a funny opposition, and it's funny when people found out that I was playing this role because most of my roles are a deeper register.
Yeah,
and
it's very different.
They were like, the girl who plays Laura Arsed can't play Yukari, and I was like, give it time. Give me a chance.
And because like you said, with the pressure of it, it would be something, because obviously, even though it's like 18 years after the original, it would be one thing, I think, if all of those original actors weren't actively working. So that's also that other weird thing of, like, I don't want to step on toes, because obviously, I'm a big dork, so this is obvious to me. So for a lot of these Japanese remakes, they still use those original actors.
Yes.
They don't recast them. Like Final Fantasy is another example of, like, the remake, all the same people for it, but it's such a different kind of thing in the Western market of, like, hey, we want to give this new experience a new voice and stuff for it. And is it ever, like, kind of been weird of, like, having any of that baggage? Like, obviously it probably feels a lot more pressure before people get their hands and ears on it versus, like, the reception of it afterwards of, like, everyone kind of giving you their, like, two thoughts.
Oh, absolutely. Before anyone knew about it, it was always terrifying because the internet can be mean.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. The internet loves to let you know, excuse me, my 20-year-old opinion's better than your new opinion.
Exactly. And, you know, you're going to have to take that on, and it's how much of that can I live with, and how much of that, when do I turn off Twitter? But luckily, for the most part, people have been really, really kind to me, and just very accepting of what it is.
Where would you kind of say you were at in your acting career during recording versus now? Like, how kind of different would you say those, like, two, like, parts of your life feel? Or does it kind of still feel like that kind of, like, gradual inclination?
I think it definitely still feels like a gradual inclination.
That sounds like a fake word, doesn't
right?
it? It's like, I know it's real.
There were definitely moments in that I felt were really good acting that weren't easy, that now in the booth are a little easier. And so I'm like, oh, okay, there's definitely, you know, there's growth, which is great. I'll always be growing. But yeah, I think it's always just a steady climb. Has it been weird having to explain to either friends or family members the increase amount of requested pictures of you putting guns up to your head? Has that been awkward to explain at all? Not many people have asked me.
Really?
A few have.
I guess you gotta bring the gun to the convention, and then there's a couple of hoops you gotta jump through first.
Yeah, a few people have asked me just to do finger guns, and I'll do it sometimes. I'm not the most comfortable with it.
Well, you've got, like, one of the worst ones if you've just got head.
Yeah, I'm like, you can't
like,
really take
you can look
picture
cool
of
like
me
this.
Like this.
You've got the, like, most relatable meme of, like, it's been a long week, Yukari. What am I gonna do with myself?
Which is also, like, I knew it was coming, but when I saw it in the game, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's jarring.
It's a choice for them to be like, we need to introduce this mechanic to the players. We're just going to have a girl with no context sitting alone in her room, really upset. No warnings necessary.
And what's funny is that was one of the first scenes that I saw when I went in, and I was like, I don't know anything about this game, but I'm going to have to go home and watch it all now because I'm intrigued by whatever's happening right here.
It's a lot to take in as well. Was it, I guess at least with that one, was it kind of easier of being like, you have a choice at least to watch some clips on YouTube of the game, or, like, you can check out the movie, or even, like, other things like that for it, of, like, obviously there's no lack of adaptations for any one sort of place for it. I guess actually one of the things that's come up with it, I know you guys don't have any say with it, but have you had any interest with post the release now, looking at those movies, like, if you guys got asked of, hey, these never got dubbed.
I'm manifesting it daily.
Oh yeah, it's like, who doesn't want it, like, 4 extremely beautiful cinema, like, when those came out and we didn't get them in English, it was just like, why?
Daily, just daily thinking, come on guys, let's do this thing. Let's do this thing.
But yeah, I don't want to steal too much of your time. I really, really do appreciate you talking with me and everything for it. I guess I should. We are also here at Naka Kon. I didn't just, like, run into you at a Starbucks. How's your first day been?
It's been really great. Everyone's awesome. I've gotten to see a lot of cool cosplay, which is my favorite part of coming to cons, other than, like, meeting everyone, is just sitting at my table going, oh, I know that one. Oh, I know that one. And if I don't, going, what is that one? It's cool looking, but what is it?
Oh, I know. Like, I have, like, the most, like, old man anime moment where I'm like, I should know what this is. I don't know why I do, but, like, it's just close enough with it. But do you either have anything you want to tell people if they mostly know you from the game, of, like, where's the best place to find you online? Anything coming up you can talk about that you're excited for?
I
know, right? Because it's like you can't say anything until it's basically out. Or until the Instagram interns leak it.
Cool coming out in America very soon that's already out in other countries.
Okay. It's narrowing it down.
And it's an anime, but that's all I can say, because that's all I can say. But you can find me on Twitter at Hezzy, HEZZY_star STARRVO, or on my Twitch stream, Star and Bear.
Awesome.
And we play all sorts of things, but we're in the middle of Persona 3.
Oh, how far are you guys so far?
It's June.
Okay. You're like right at the peak of like, I feel like once you get after the summer vacation, everyone's back from the beach. You're like, man, look at this. We've got a full team now. We're having fun. It's all downhill from September. Everyone's going to hate their lives.
Not just life. It's all downhill from September.
It's true. Whether you're a student or a 30-year-old man, they're both relatable feelings either way with it. But thank you again so much. I really appreciate talking with you.
Of course.
All right. So how's everyone's day 2 been so far? Has anyone been rich enough to afford any of the Persona merchandise in the vendor hall? What's the highlights? What's people been buying?
Didn't buy it, but I saw a $120 Goro Keshi figure in the vendor hall.
Now, are we talking the figure or the noodle or the cup noodle topper? If it was the cup, this is the only panel you can come up to with a Glock at your head, and no one's going to be worried about anything. Oh, nice. All right. We are here. It's 9:30, so we're going to get started, and I'm sure this will go horrendously long, but until the karaoke gets here, honestly, what we could really do, we'll just go long, and then we can start the karaoke by singing the ending theme really, really terribly together. So, everybody, thank you so much for coming to this. This is the Persona 3 Reload fan panel. I am said fan. My name is Spencer Presley. I run a weekly SMT, Atlas, and Persona-related podcast. If you're saying to yourself, a weekly podcast about this? Yes, I also say that to myself. It's called Shin Megami Tensei Network. If you ever get bored, I guarantee you it's the only people who are doing this weekly is me. So if you like what you see here, this is basically the show, but in a live format with much less fun things going on. So, as we are talking about Persona 3 Reload, we can't talk about Reload without the OG. And it is so funny because, like, for the longest time, Persona 3 definitely was not, like, my favorite in the series. I know, blasphemy. I'm one of those gross P4s in the... Thank you. Actually, here, we'll do a quick, like, because obviously this is an audio show. We'll give us, instead of raising your hands, you can give us a woo. Let's get a woo. Who are the P5ers in the crowd? That's like a really low amount for the P5 crowd. Who's the P4 fans in the crowd? All right, then where are the P3 fans? This would have been really funny if that was like the quietest out of all of them so far. They're like, dude, there's like nothing else going on tonight. We had to do something. By the way, if you guys want, you can be welcome to sit in some of the open seats in the back. If you want to be a stander, please feel free to be a stander. Where are my P2 duologists? Okay, now I'm just expecting like you guys to start like shooting guns up in the air when I say, who's the P1 fans? Just needed some dude just in the back. So, Persona 3, little PS2 game you guys might have heard of from back in the day, was a very, very big deal for Atlas, not only when it released in Japan, but also when it released in the rest of the world. And it was one of those games that for the longest time was very much a turning point for the series. Shin Megami Tensei and Persona as a whole, for the most part, had always kind of felt like another spin-off series when compared to something like Devil Summoner, the Jack Bros games even, or Soul Hackers, and everything else like that of, hey, we're doing one or two of these, but they're still very much SMT at their core, hence why for the longest time, even in the West, we actually still called them SMT, where Japan dropped it many, many years before we did. So when Persona 3 was in development, they were really looking to kind of shake things up. They wanted to do something new with the PlayStation 2, and what was so interesting was there's not a lot of footage out there, but they've definitely had a lot of interviews and stuff over the years of Persona 3 even started as early back as having a like top-down camera, like the original like Persona 1 and 2 and stuff like that. Obviously still having like 3D models, but
at its core, one of its big things was always going to be daily school life, combat, and social links in terms of like telling your story, who your protagonist is, making it kind of feel like you're a character. For Persona 3, I always feel like, especially way back in the day before the series got really popular, I felt like the really dumbed down answer for like what's Persona 3 was always like Pokemon for cool teens, or like a high school dating sim with RPG mechanics, which like I feel like neither do the game justice. It's still very much like its own thing, and I've always appreciated it for it. So just as out of curiosity, who here started with OG vanilla P3? So as you'll see as we continue on, there's a lot of versions of Persona 3. As in, with our next one, we've got Persona 3 Fez. So I always end up asking this for people just out of morbid curiosity, but I've got to ask, who here actually knows what the F stands for? Yes?
Festival.
What was that?
Festival.
Festival it is. I wish Fez like was just the word. Like there was a thing like, oh, it's the pheasant edition of Persona 3.
For the rest of us.
Yeah, it's the Festivus Persona 3. I mean, honestly, after beating the answer, I do want to have an airing of grievance with Atlas. So yes, Persona 3 Fez is actually not really the best way of describing it. It's just what the package is called. Unfortunately, it's not just one big happy festival. God, that would have been a lot nicer. We need that when you beat Danganronpa mode, and it's that like what if of like, what if this game wasn't about everyone being miserable the whole time and everyone stayed alive and everyone was happy? I would be very much into that. That is not Persona 3 though. So Persona 3 Fez is split up into two experiences. You have the journey and the answer. The journey is the base original game, and there were some additional like quality of life changes they added to it. The answer is very much an epilogue. I'll try not to, especially with how new Reload is, be super oblivious with the spoilers, but especially with the ending of P3, as soon as you even remotely know what the answer's about, it kind of spoils the main ending of Persona 3. So I will be respectful enough with it, but you will probably be smarter than a fifth grader and infer what's happening at this point. Whereas the journey is following you, the protagonist, as you're going out throughout the year. The answer follows the C's members following up the events of the game, but you are instead playing as Aigis. Aigis has now got this super sweet, super combat heavy, I don't even know, like militia armor. It's a choice. And if you actually look behind her, there's her very much not often talked about, but still super sick design for Metis. I don't feel like Metis never gets like enough love. Like she's a really, really cool design. Not as cool as Labras though. I love Labras.
Labras is good, but all three is great.
Well, there's two. Just play Ultimax. So next up we've got one of my... Oh, actually, I guess I should say, who started with Fez in here? All right. Now, for our next one, who started with the very not controversial Persona 3 Portable? Yeah. Now, this is like a weird one because this has come out more recently. Who were like the OGs who played it on the PSP? And then who played it when the 2023 re-release? I know, sir, I don't know what shmemulation is, but my Nintendo lawyers have been alerted to your presence and they have slashed your tires. So Persona 3 Portable is my personal favorite way to experience... Well, sorry, spoilers for what we'll talk about later. Used to be my favorite way to experience the Persona 3 story. It is very much not a one-for-one port. It was only available for the longest time on the PlayStation Portable, and it later on was ported to Steam, Xbox, and PlayStation 4, and was basically the original core journey experience trimmed down into a visual novel light experience, but instead of just being able to play as a male protagonist, you actually had a female protagonist, which was a really big deal because, man, that series has been a sausage fest for a really long time. Exactly. Well, it still is a sausage fest. They can twinkify Joker as much as they want, but like we all know what's going on. Like we need some options in this house. So yes, if you ever were playing Persona 3 and went, listen, guys, I don't really care about your daddy issues, Yukari. I want to know what are Akihiko's daddy issues or lack of daddy issues. So if you were wondering what are some other romance options in your life, whether they be problematic or not, the choice is yours to be made in Portable.
Don't do Ken.
Listen, guys, listen. Ken being a social link, reminder, optional. You're the one clicking those buttons. You're allowed to, just like with Maiko, no one's forcing you to tell this 7-year-old girl you're going to marry her. Yes, Ken's non-existent parents would be very disappointed in you if you made those choices. Sorry, I like to imagine probably like hamburger is probably like somewhat of a parent at this point. So we now work our way up to Persona 3 Reload. It is the next real version of adapting Persona 3, but I do want to give a really special shout out because I could have my own panel talking about these on my own. Super big shout out if you have done either of these two. If you have if you have read the Persona 3 manga, it is very, very good. Udon published it a couple years ago. They even did a reprint recently for all the volumes. So everything is out there if you are looking for a nice media adaptation with very beautiful art. And then also bonus points if you've seen the Persona 3 quadrilogy of movies. It is an amazing adaptation. Very, very beautiful. Very, very pretty. My only problem with it is subs only. And that still hurts to this day. I would like to imagine in a post-reload world that with all this newfound like kind of hype and anticipation for Persona 3, we could maybe get the new cast to do it. I would really, really be excited for it. Unfortunately, Aniplex are the ones who would have to pay for it, and they are notoriously very cheap unless your property is Demon Slayer. So, $400 DVD box sets aside, Persona 3 Reload is here, came out in February of 2024, and was special for a lot of reasons. For Atlas multi-platform releases, what was interesting about it, it is in the West was going to be the last physical PS4 version. So like how Atlas still has other games coming out, like shout out to Unicorn Overlord, SMT5 Vengeance, all of those are still coming out on PS4, but will be digital only. P3R is the last physical PS4 game out there. So shout out, who actually played this on PS4? Your names have been noted. We'll be bullying you into buying a PS5 or Xbox eventually. It'll probably be a PS5 if we're being honest, though. Okay, that too. And also shout out to like the 3 people who played this on Xbox. But if you're someone who somehow got dragged here and hasn't played this is still on Game Pass, which is like such a super, super sick deal to play this thing. But let's go into what the heck is Persona 3 Reload. Persona 3 Reload is, in a lot of ways, the antithesis of a lot of like modern day remakes. What was really funny, especially because of them both releasing in the same month, comparing this to like a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth / remake situation is so interesting. Whereas like a Final Fantasy VII remake is very much like playing with your expectations, drastically changing things. You never really know what to expect, even when it's like something like as a minor mission or a major mission. Persona 3 Reload was made at its heart to just straight up be a remake of The Journey. Note that I said The Journey and not The Answer and not Portable. So we'll get to that later, but it was in development for many, many years as basically Atlas knew from fan surveys and fan feedback that people really love Persona 3. People in fan surveys voted and they said, hey, well, mostly Japan, but Atlas doesn't really care about the West unless we're buying stuff. I was curious, who here, before this got announced / released, who here wanted a P3 remake? So, like, I was one of those people who was like, I was kind of happy. We've had multiple ports of this game. Obviously, it wasn't the most available with it, but I was someone coming into this game when it got announced. Shout out, by the way, to the Instagram intern who leaked this trailer. Big shout out to them.
I hope we didn't get into too much trouble.
Well, they can't get into any more trouble when they have no job, but that also helps. So, when this was official, I remember being really trepidatious of being like, is something wrong with me? I was like, why am I more excited for Tactica than Reload? Like, there should be something wrong in my brain. And it was just that thing of I wasn't sure if this was something I needed in my life all the way up until it really coming out. And I remember playing it and streaming it on release day, and it just clicked because this is the kind of remake, especially if you've already played P3 before, where it is so faithful in all that right dopamine ways of it feels like it feels like you remember playing the original if you had, but it feels just enough like a 2024 RPG to not feel like it's dated in other ways. For all the people out there I ask, who played Reload as their first experience with P3? We're all just a bunch of old OG Atlas fans in here, but I appreciate it. So, like I said, the mixture of Persona 3, as it kind of splits up with it, is that daily life with school, social links, battling mechanics, and so on. And they really didn't have to change much in that mechanic outside of adding in new events, but story-wise, it's all pretty much the same. In terms of like added story content, it's kind of interesting. There are bits of moments, and they kind of teased this a little bit from when it was announced, but of basically being like, hey, there are characters you can't all have social links with. Like, there is no social links for all the guys in the dormitory. But if you want to learn how bad Junpei is at planting stuff, or if you want to go on a depression quest with Ken at the rooftop of the building, you can do that. And I really appreciate all these little extra added moments. Oh, man, especially for Shinji. I was milking those extra Shinji moments. I was like, I need to make this stretch of time last as long as possible. Yeah, so, like I said, we've got our daily life elements with it, but of course we're also spending an ungodly amount of time in Tartarus, which, by the way, shout out to, I know not everyone loves the design and the rinse and repeatness of Tartarus. It really grew on me in this release, and I think a large part of it was the little flourishes they put on the floor and on like the kind of like the window dressing. Like, obviously at the end of the day, we're running through procedurally generated hallways. It can't really get that much more exciting, but just even little things like on that first block, seeing the like a raven or like the feathers falling from the sky and like just little cool touches like that. Like when you get up to, I think it's like the 4th or 5th block where it's like the neon like dance club lights everywhere. It really, really does that. It feels like you're really making progress. The floors feel different, even though it's just tricking my brain, because if we turned off all the window dressing, every floor of Tartarus is basically the same. You're going to get one of a couple of different patterns for almost 300 floors. Now, also, again, as I was saying, like, the opening of this game really kind of opening my eyes to, I didn't realize how much I wanted Reload till I was playing Reload. One of the first, like, oh my god, this is a gorgeous looking game, was stepping into that main hallway. Because, like, for the longest time, I'm so used to this shot as a static shot. You're here, you're walking around, you're running, and then for it to kind of just be this thing where no, you can not only like run around, you're seeing your reflection on the floor, you can run behind like the stairs, you can run behind the stairwell, and it just something about it like clicked in my head, because I would say Persona 3 Reload, in my opinion, is a very pretty game with a really big asterisk next to it. Of like, if you're someone who's like showing off this game, you're not going to go to the nightclub to show your friends like, oh, dude, check out how like 3 of these models are moving in this game. Look how sweet it looks. But that's, again, kind of keeping that tone of that original feeling of the NPCs not having to be any more detailed than they are, versus when you look at how well animated all the fights are, the summoning animations, going up through Tartarus, all the bosses, all the dungeons. And I think the combat and the exploration really, really show where this game kind of flexes its budget. Because I think at the end of the day, whether you're someone who either loves neutrals or hates Persona 5, we can all agree at the end of the day, like, Persona 5 is Atlas like flexing their budget through pretty much every instance of that game. Whereas like Persona 3 Reload is definitely like a big budget, but we're all expecting and know that like Persona 6 is going to look even better than this. So, as I said, like we were mentioning, of traveling along through the different dungeons and everything we have, all the different like shifting blocks was also like a fun little thing of like really kind of making that opening animation where we see Tartarus moving, evolving, and shifting. Like, I understand why they really only like show it like 2 or 3 times in the game, but it is kind of one of those things you forget of, like, hey, this isn't just resetting because I'm here on a different night. This is a tower that's meant to be in a live structure that's constantly moving around you as like the true nightmare palace that it is. And again, kind of showing off a couple more of those shots. By the way, if you have like a like OLED TV, like this block looks absolutely like crazy. Now, kind of going into the battle mechanics for everything, they kept everything pretty similar. There is a lot of quality of life changes that definitely do help. Speaking again about Persona 5, the shifting mechanic, which is basically just baton pass, I cannot imagine going back to this game without it. It is such a not only time saver, but is so satisfying of having those moments and using those chains and like really feeling like your party can just be like a 4-man or 3-man or 2-man killing team, and is just so satisfying to have those moments happen when you're in a fight. Now, again, kind of going back to like the UI with it, they fit still with that original theme of like cards, guns, silhouettes, and everything like that, but always still feeling and like oozing personality, while again sticking with that original vibe of the game without kind of feeling like we lost anything. Like even something as tiny as the fact like this is so sad it's 2024 and I have to praise this. There are free costumes to find in the game. They're not all DLC. Like yes, there's DLC costumes, but like let's all be honest with each other. We were expecting the battle panties to be DLC. No one was like, we're either not going to keep them, or B, they're going to charge me like $20 for the battle panties. It's true. They had a lot of restraint. They did not do cross-dressing DLC yet, so at least like they had that going for them. And like once again, kind of talking about like other like oh wow moments for me of that. It's like such a tiny thing too, because unless you really are paying attention to it, it's only scripted once when you're doing the opening of the game and you're summoning your persona for the first time. But that moment when you have a new protagonist in battle and they're summoning their persona for the first time, how it's slowed down, shows their character pulling the evoker up to their head, pulling the trigger, and then you have that like screen pop up behind them and it shatters and everything for that critical. It's like the one guaranteed critical you're always going to get, and it's always that like perfect dopamine rush of introducing yourself to the new persona, seeing their skills. Because, I mean, let's be honest, nothing would be more sad than like seeing Caesar for the first time and he just whiffs like a massive electric shock. Now, speaking of also really satisfying things, I was a really big fan of how they changed the all-out attacks. Obviously, throwing up a couple of JPEGs on screen and putting up a cartoon dust cloud is funny, but we probably can't get away with it as much this time. And again, kind of following up in that expectations and things they've learned from like Persona 3 is the all-out attack end screens, which are basically just like wallpaper bait. Like, who doesn't love these? The only one I always think about, like, why'd they do Ken so dirty? Everyone looks so cool, and it's like, hey, Ken, I want you to know when you do your strongest attack, you're just going to fall on your butt every time, buddy. Like, the only saving grace for him is his theurgy move. Like, at least his theurgy looks cool, but, like, his, like, wallpaper attack of, like, everyone's looking sweet. The dog one-upped him. His line's even better. Koromaru's given him that dog line, and he's still getting one-upped, unfortunately. My personal favorite is probably... It's really tough. It's probably a split between, like, Junpei or Shinji. Anyone like have like a personal like favorite of the all-out attack end screens they have? Protagonist is solid. Also, by the way, such a tiny. I didn't have a slide to compare it. Such a cool touch that when you're playing the beginning of the game and they don't have their new C's armor, how the all-out attack screens still look like their full costume. Because obviously they're not all drawn for every costume, but they have at least the first 4 where they're having their regular default like school uniform on. And by the way, I wasn't sure how I really felt about it, but it definitely grew on me. I love everybody's new outfits. It's nice that it's optional, that you don't have to, but like the fact that it is just a shoulder guard and an overly long black leather coat is so cool, even though it shouldn't be. Like, also, why did Akutsuki only order one size? Ken's like drowning in this thing. He's got like a gown hanging behind him the whole round. Oh yeah, I mean, also I also feel for many reasons. Bad for Shinji. Shinji's just like, hey, I know you've got this giant red coat. We're just going to give you another big coat with your beanie to just be perpetually a real big sweaty mess the entire time. And then I guess in Koromaru, just slap on a little bit of extra shoulder armor. They'll be fine. I feel like for Koromaru, he's got to be so hard to do costumes for, because it's like you either go too far with like the Nightmare Fuel Morgana skin, or like you don't, because like I feel like they could do like more fun stuff, but like I feel like it might not be as universally fun. Of like I would love to see like a Cerberus skin for him, or we'll give him like a little hot dog costume. It'll be like those like cringy like dog costumes you see on TikTok. And then kind of like we were talking about with these social links. Actually, here, while we already have this one up here with it, we were mentioning theurgy attacks as well. Obviously, kind of basically this game's limit break moves with it. I don't know which ones I really like. Like, having a favorite theurgy really changed for me as I was playing. So many of them ended up not only being a thing that you're using constantly and kind of like to your advantage, especially for like Persona 3 really doesn't have like a lot of like really, really tough battles unless you're fighting Elizabeth, I would say. But like the theurgies were always, they had that right pace. They didn't ever feel like they came in too long or they took too long to get. Obviously, you could go to the fortune teller to bump them up and stuff with it. But it was always really, really nice that you'd have that moment, especially if you were in the monad dungeons and stuff. And if you have like a really tricky fight to like bust out an almighty theurgy attack and get a critical or something, it was just a really, really good like hit with it. Probably my favorite, like without going for like the obvious ones, Mitsuru's first one where she like sits on the iceberg is really, really cool. Again, it's going to seem like super, super cheap, but this is true. I had too many emotions when I saw Shinji's for the first time. Only because like the little blood tear that comes down his face.
Junpei's second.
Junpei's second is also sweet, but again, Junpei's second is just like a sad reminder. It's like every time I'm like, I'm not ready to think about this.
Yeah.
Anyone have any like theurgy highlights that's not almighty judgment that nukes everything on screen? any yeah. Oh my God, yeah. Frost Brothers, by the way, like, because again, remember, theurgy attacks technically new for the game, but was something that we had in the original with the demon fusion attacks and everything for it, but ironically fleshed out, given to all of the party members, while also way, way, way less of them, just because there were so many more in the original game, but they were nowhere near as like highly animated and highly detailed. But I do love the Frost Brothers, not only because I love two Frost talking into a microphone, but also I love two Jacks talking into a microphone, but it is just a one-for-one of how it looks like in the original, of them just doing their little like which makes like no sense at all. Yeah. I guess is first or second?
The second one, full Astro Boy.
Yeah, like I like Orgia mode, but like watching her basically drop a tactical nuke on someone is just too funny, especially like that final shot, like the way, whether you're fighting one enemy or not, where like it almost looks like her kick just dives through the whole screen, is so satisfying, that little crunch. Any other like favorite theurgies?
Yukari's first.
Yukari's first is, yeah, that's also really good. Also, hey, shout out to that one of like, do you guys remember when like there was that really, really, really early test footage of P3R people all said was fake, and it was her theurgy? It was like, this can't be Persona 3. She's not wearing her armband. This is a Gary's mod animation. This can't be a real game. It's true. Yeah, she hit her. Yeah, she hit it. I don't even know what we're doing here. So, kind of moving on to our next one. Like I said, we've got social links still being a really, really big thing in this game. There are no new social links this time, but I like that they not only kept all the original ones with it, but all the facts of, and this is like such a minor thing, but is such a big one for me, especially for RPGs nowadays. I love that they are all voiced. It was always, it's such a tiny thing, but it makes them all matter so much more. Of like, and this game has probably some of like the most voiced lines versus non-voiced lines, but it really, really, really helps of not only getting to know those characters more, but especially also getting to know and understand these new voice actors we have. Like, the cast for this game, I was really, really shocked by, because it was an interesting mix of new people I'd never heard of before, some people I'd seen but in vastly different roles, and I was really, really interested too, because like I love the entire cast of Persona 3, and the tricky part is like it's not like they're all not acting anymore. So it's one of those things that's kind of like, okay, how are we going to handle this going forward? Like, I was definitely someone who would be like, I mean, I would have liked it if they brought everybody back, but I'm still interested and want to see how the current new cast will do it. And I think one of the nice touches they do with this game, especially because it was recorded by the same studio who did the original one way, way, way back in the day at PCB Productions, is how many of the original cast are still in the game in different little roles. I think the obvious one is definitely got to be Akihiko's original voice actor being the police officer is such a perfect allegory there. Yuri Lowenthal is Yukari's father, so you get to hear a little bit of Yuri. Well, you probably hear more of Yuri in this game than the entirety of P3. And just like the little dumb lore nerd in me, I love the fact that the only character who's the same is Elizabeth, because it has like my dumb brain rot theories going in of like, okay, what if like actually this is post Ultimax Elizabeth and she's found a new timeline and she's gonna try and stop the events of like actual Persona 3. No, she just still like sleeps with them and then leaves and everything happens the same. So like, I asked a friend this recently. So like you get to a point when you do Elizabeth's requests, which are basically just like silly like little like side missions and stuff. And eventually it ends up where Elizabeth goes, hey, you've shown me around town. You've taken me to your dorms. You've taken me to school. Even your dog knows who I am now. But no one's going to ask any questions. But the only understandable place I can go next is your bedroom. What else would have happened there? Like, were they going to read a book together? Was he going to show her Innocent Sin online? Like, there's nothing else that those two were going to do there. And the fact that it then ends with her being like, I would really appreciate if you don't tell anyone what happened in here. Yeah. So, unless, like, he decided to show her the entirety of Persona Trinity Souls and she never wanted to talk with him again, I don't know what else would have happened in that bedroom besides them knocking boots. So, Makoto Yuki confirmed Horn Dog. So speaking of horn dog moments, social influence, I always like asking people this question. Who was, whether you had a harem, a no-rum, or a one-on-one romance, who was your like OTP pairing for social links, if you had anyone at all, and why? If anyone wants to like put up their hand. Yes. So like, was it one of those things of like, because like I think with Mitsuru, it's always a tough one of like, especially because she's so late in the game, of like, is it because like she's like a beautiful, strong, confident woman, or is it just like, hey, I know your dad's died, so you seem kind of vulnerable. I'm going to take you around town and give you some fast food, and maybe you'll fall in love with me. Yes.
You go.
So like, what was the reason for you?
I've always she's the first one I romanced in the original D3, so I want to go back and redo it because I like the energetic tomboy.
Yuko was such an interesting pick because I feel like a lot of people also, she was my first as well. And I think it's one of those ones of, especially because it helps that she's someone you can start a social link with really, really early, it feels the most natural. Like for people out there, like with the Mitsurus and the Igus options as well, I understand it, toaster judging aside, I understand it. But because you have so little time with them, it really is hard for like to feel like that relationship grew naturally versus like with Yuko, and even I'd say like Fuka's another one that you get to spend like almost about half a year with in terms of social link romancing. Like Fuka and Yuko for me definitely feel like the most natural because of like their story progression, and Yukari as well. Yukari's is another good one of she has her walls up so long that it makes a lot of sense of like where this relationship would go. And like I love that moment on the beach too of like obviously you don't have a social link with him, so of like choosing to like give her the hug or not, or just like laugh at her as she like cries on the beach alone. Like it was just one of those like interesting things of like these relationships kind of growing in a more natural way than other ones do, just because of timing or how you're playing the social links on themselves. You had your hand in the back. Yeah, you? Well, you can also go, yeah.
The person back.
Okay.
I have two. So for the morning, I love Kenji. I always go to him. And then for the night, I go for Tonica.
I love it's like, here's my daytime lover and here's my nighttime lover. I definitely imagine Kenji would be like the side link, though, even though it's during the day. What about you, though? What would your picks be?
You might think I'm going crazy with this, but can I do mods count for social link romance?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, because I watched my friend play PPR. He had the mod installed where you can say you love Ryochi in it.
Oh no, that's fine. I was worried it was going to be like Tanaka or something. I'm like, bro, the way that guy is scummy, it negs me in all the right ways. So, any other like social link shout outs anyone wants to give in the crowd?
I like Fuka because she's nice.
Fuka is so nice. Like, by the way, we all just need it. The whole world needs to be. The fact that Fuka has like one friend in the entirety of this game makes me so sad. Like, who would not want to be friends with this little jelly bean of a lady? She is just the sweetest thing. Yes.
Yes.
Now how come though?
Oh, bro, I literally cried the first time I completed this.
My friend completely missed out on it. He just didn't see it.
Listen, bro. If your story was so good, it would be on More Than Just a Sunday. That's all I'm saying. They'd be like, sorry, I'd love to hear about your dead people problems or your pink alligators, but I gotta go hang out with this abusive monk father who hasn't seen his son in 50 years. By the way, yeah, shout out to also some of, not like the worst. I don't think there's any allegorically terrible social links, but there's definitely some. There's definitely some that, like, I don't feel like I've helped your life at all in any meaningful way, shape, or form. I like to imagine deep down, like real deep down, maybe the Food King might have been better if we just didn't come into his life. Maybe some individuals are meant to be left alone. Oh, no. For sure. Also, shout out to this game. Who here had, outside of the forced mandatory one, who here had a, oh my god, what am I doing, reverse social link moment happen to them in this? I love that these are in there. Obviously, in terms of a min-maxing your run of a game, which, by the way, at least for me, I never am one of those people who look up a trophy guide or like, I love getting platinum trophies. I think the worst way to play these games is with like a efficiency guide. I think the best way to play Persona, in my opinion, is don't look anything up except the school quiz answers, because why not? Like, they're right. They built a button in to cheat. Like, the reason they're not even on the finals is like a joke at this point. You should just be able to lean over to Igus and she like Googles them for you. So, outside of the questions, obviously, the like choices and the social link stuff for it, I like having those be a surprise of like what's going to be a 1-star response versus what's going to be a 3-star response, or what's going to be a like completely poop your pants on the bed kind of response, which I always really, really appreciate. Like the people who, I forget which social link it is for it, but dang it, why am I forgetting? The girl who's in the student council with you. Chihiro, like the people who go in for the kiss too early for her, and she's like, I'm just like, which by the way, like I've always find so funny because like understandably, and I think most anime like scenarios, like she's given you a lot of signs. She's like, I've got a friend who's like in love with this guy with blue hair, and like he's super hot. What should I do with him? And then you guys have this bonding moment happen to you both, and you're like, I just don't know what to do anymore with my life. And he was like, now's my chance. It's like, what kind of girl do you think I am? You have to wait 3 more social links before I let that kiss happen. So, speaking of also problematic social links in this game, shout out to Persona 3 Reload for having not 1 but 2 different types of grooming in the game. So that's don't worry, 1 is consensual though, so that helps. Koromaru is allowing this into his life. So, yes, the magician's social link aside, like I said about making what's the right choices, what's the wrong choices, it is so funny of like, while I would be playing through Persona 3, I would like lean over to my wife and be like, all right, here's what's going on with this guy, or here's what's going on with this girl, what do you pick? And then it'd be like, all right, you see that one? It'd be like, yeah, that's terrible. Why would you say that? Best response possible. Like, the only way it could be worse is, like, I always think of that, like, I forget which rank it is in Persona 5, but, like, the one with, like, Kawakami where it's like, that's the best part. Like, he's like, no, we're teaching the youth the wrong messages. So, obviously, big dummies aside, and, like, ma'am, whoever made this meme, it is just, like, so true.
I saw it. Where was gonna go?
Oh my god. But yes, also shout out to new activities in the game. When you're not grooming when you're not allowing your friends to think grooming is a cool thing, you can pet Koromaru on the couch and he'll give you a treat. There's not a social link aspect to it. He doesn't get more powerful. He just really likes getting his pets on. Also, shout out to, I've always been such a fan of when the Persona games let you go to the movies for those little snippets of them, like, listening to the actual movie, because they're usually super duper outlandish or weird descriptions. I love every TV show you get to watch with all of your, like, social link members. Like, it's so funny of, like, for some reason Yukari's watching, like, some, like, garbage, like, zombie teen romance thing. I love the idea of, like, Ken watching some old, like, mafia boss, like, PI movie, and then just, like, watching the Discovery Channel with your dog as, like, a wolf pet. Like, I personally would have just, like, put on Wolf Rain and let him, like, figure out the rest for himself, but that's just me. Now, a couple of highlights I wanted to put on there. These three, like, specifically are, like, some of my favorites. Like, I already mentioned with Yuko following up. By the way, Bebe, very underrated. I know it's not everyone's favorite, but if I'm allowed to make pretty dresses and tell a French man to do a really terrible Arnold Schwarzenegger impression, I'm going to do it every single time. So, by the way, did anyone out here with the baby link not pick I'll Be Back for his, like, how do you say goodbye in Japan? Like, I was talking about this recently. Like, so what did you pick?
For a second, I just said the stop.
No, man. You're like, I think that should be one of those things where they ask you, like, for the double confirm. They're like, listen, this is a really funny option. Are you sure you don't want him to say it? I promise, he'll say it every time. He's gonna be on his deathbed. Baby is gonna be like, I'm dying at the age of 503 in my French healthcare bed, and I never got to go back to Japan, but if I could, I would just want him to know. I'll be back. And then he just dies. Because he's never seen any Terminator movie. So he's like, man, this is like the coolest thing he's ever told. Because like, in my dumb, very dumb headcanon, because the protagonist is not voiced, I'm imagining when you're talking to Bebe, Makoto Yuki has to do a bad I'll be back impression. He's not just like saying, oh yeah, you just say I'll be back, and he's like, oh, I'll be back. Like, no, like it's a two-way cringe street every time they see each other. Because he has to gaslight Bebe. He can't just like say it once and then he's like realizing, wait, why does no one else I talk to in this country? Like the only friend, but reminder, the only friends Bebe has, R.I.P. dead aunt, the only friends Bebe has in his life are the weird teacher with the hat and you. This guy's got a really, really low like social score. Yes, and also shout outs to a long line of very sad athlete and being poor stories. But God, I really appreciate his social link as well. Now, we're going to go through the cast of characters because while Persona 3 has a super, super amazing and very diverse and weird cast, they're all special for their own little reasons. Like whether it's a character that you really, really love and you like either always find like funny or that you really like their lines or mannerisms or connected with. I always like think for me like there's a lot that like I take away from most of the cast. First off, obviously we have Makoto Yuki. I'm one of those like weird people, like when it comes to the silent protagonist like characters, I don't really connect with them in the way of like, I don't view them as me, even though I do give them my dumb name. Like for real, like when I play, there's no canon name. It's just Spencer Presley. So the whole time I'm playing this game, they're like, oh, Spencer Coon, I really love you. And then like my wife is just cringing next to me and I'm like, listen, Jamal Kuhn came before me, and I'm following in his footsteps. Jamal Kuhn will never be forgotten. So I don't view the protagonists of these games as a illusion or version of myself. And I think because also of them not being voiced, your answers not really being voiced, the illusion of choice in these games definitely leave a lot to be desired. So when I see people out there, and I have friends out there who are oh yeah, Makoto Yuki or Joker from Persona 5, they're my favorite character in the series. To me, I'm happy for you, but that just kind of sounds like you love yourself the most in the whole game. Although I will say, while definitely not Persona 5 strong suit in comparison, because Persona 3's character does have a very similar backstory, I think they flesh out Makoto Yuki's backstory a little bit more in terms of tragic backstory, understandable orphan, but we're not dwelling on it. There's no trauma flashbacks. You get it. There's not a need, which is always interesting because there's a theme that comes up a lot of family, but it's never always really brought up of being wow, the special execution. I always forget what the other E is for, squad. I'm really glad we can now be our new family. No, they're just friends. They're all friends and they're all doing their thing, and I appreciate it. So
I used to have a trauma about that.
What was that?
I used to have a trauma about it, not him.
Well, yeah, that's true. I guess it's got a lot of guilt for a lot of reasons. So next up we've got Yukari. So shout out to all the Yukari fans out there. Yukari, I think more in the original release was definitely more of a controversial character. Not in terms of she didn't do anything bad. We don't have to cancel Yukari. She was just one of those characters of you either loved her or you hated her. And there was very few people kind of in between. I think one of those things of being she doesn't really fit an archetype really well. She's talked about the school idol, but Mitsuru's right there. There's no diehard Yukari fan in the hallways of the diehard Mitsuru fan. But Yukari does have a lot of great moments, especially talking about when we were on the beach, especially learning more about her father. And on I think actually probably my favorite Yukari moment is the moment she has on the school vacation with Mitsuru. Is really, really, really good moment of them kind of having that healthy relationship together of overcoming their differences and getting to know each other. Best boy Junpei, shout out. Junpei should be a character that we should all meme on more than he already is and talk about how silly and goofy and stereotyping he is, but God bless him. I love that stupid bad boy. He is just so wholesome, and he has his moments too of where he's a total tool. Don't forget, there's just a week he just doesn't like you because you did a good job at saving everyone. He doesn't even he's you think you're so cool making us all not die. Oh, real cool of you, leader. Exactly, but again, that's one of those things of it doesn't really last on it. You see where he's coming from, especially because once again Junpei, not an unpopular kid, but definitely far from being very popular. And also his story exponentially, I think, gets a whole lot better once Chihiro gets involved in everything with it of getting to... Oh yeah, Chidori. Jesus, sorry. It's been a long day. Once Chidori gets involved in the story of, I love when the game would split to their interactions of him meeting her, following along, and especially then following her up and following back up from the hospital with her, and all those moments are really, really, really special. And also, I always have to remind myself that I think it was until Fez, the moment with her in January is missable. And I always think about how sad that is if you miss that event with her. So big shout outs to Junpei. He is super, super fun. And man, I'm here for the Ace Detective game anytime, anywhere. Spin off it up any day now. We've got the Ice Queen Mitsuru. Where's the lovers for Mitsuru in the crowd? So Mitsuru is another really interesting case of a character who really evolves throughout the game. She starts it by being probably one of the worst navigators of all time, but she makes up for it by having a cool bike and a lot of money, so we keep her on the team. And then when Fuka eventually replaces her because she's good at that, we're like, hey, I should probably stab people. I'm pretty good at stabbing people. We get to learn a lot with her as well of the guilt that she kind of has from her family baggage. A lot of family baggage, by the way. My one thing with Mitsuru, I always wish there was just one or two more scenes with her dad. Just because I think her father is such an interesting character, not only in the sense of like their personal history with the shadows and the dark hour and everything, but also with like his grandfather, not his grandfather, Mitsuru's grandfather and his father as well, how everything kind of ties in there. Akihiko. Love Akihiko. Just remember, folks, there's nothing wrong with dry-eaten protein powder. Water is optional. The protein powder is mandatory. Cooking with Akihiko might be one of the most undeniably fun pleasures in this game, and I hope one day can replace Persona 5 for being the pancake game. I want more people to remember making pancakes in this game than the dumb pancake thing from P5. What was that? It's true.
In the Femc route, he did.
That is true. Another reason Femc route, best route. So,
Yes.
Akihiko, really, really great character. Again, kind of like a similar sort of like stereotype of like, he's your senpai, but he's enough of a meathead without feeling like being a complete idiot. Because there's really only those few couple of moments that I find funny in like Persona 3 of like, I feel like until you could understandably think he's cool until the beach scene. Operation Babe Hunt is a just complete like call out moment for all three of those doofuses. Like, oh, like they couldn't pick up like a towel if they tried all at the same time together. Like they are just really bad at it. But I love Akihiko, and I hope one day I can find out what's under that Band-Aid. Like, let me just see what's under the Band-Aid, please, for it. Also, again, if you haven't played Ultimax or Persona 4 Arena, you deserve it to yourself to see what this dude looks like after high school. He is yoked. He's what protein commercials wishes they could turn people into. Next up, we've got Best Navigator, always Best Navigator. Fuka is, the Fuka Bazooka, Fuka Friday, all the memes with it. She is such a great character, and I really also appreciate just having more stuff to do with her in this game in terms of more events of getting to hang out and spend time with her, watching her relationships change, not only with you as a character, but also how she kind of interacts with all the different girls and stuff like that has always been really, really fun. And just like a super, super like interesting story, because like they don't fit her into like one bus. She's not just like, oh, she's because like, again, the P5 allegories are really hard not to make. She's not the one-trick tech pony like Futaba. And just in the sense of like, she's not just known for tech. Like, she's also an art club. She also likes to read. Like, she also likes to read various different kinds of books and goes to movies and things like that with it that flesh out who she was. And obviously, she hasn't been locked up in a room for multiple years due to family trauma. So that also probably helps you be a little bit more of a deep character. Next up, we've got Aigis, best toaster in the world. The brave little toaster, little Aigis-chan. Everyone loves her. What a weird character, especially like going back to like how she's introduced. I forget like just how nonchalant this world. Reminder in 2009 lore is like no, yeah, like she's just she's what you think she's got going on down there. She's just killing robots, and I think like the thing that makes it almost so unbelievable is because the way that the story in P3 works, you never see any of her other like siblings. So it's like you don't really like. Was this just some weird science like freak experiment where he got one of her, and then you eventually realize there's about like 100 of them, and then one of them has a Brooklyn accent for some reason. But like, it's really, really funny of like how she very slowly but surely kind of grows into herself. And again, kind of going back to Mitsuru, I really would have loved having more than a month to really get to know her and have that social link. Because like, especially when you realize you only have those 30 days to like max out her social link, it's such a bummer if you either don't get to do it or kind of want it to have a little bit more room to grow, because her switch is very natural in terms of the story of her trauma, her relation to the main character, how her feelings are adapting of, am I a robot? Am I human? Is it weird that the robot wants to be in love with the human? All these things like that. And I really like the themes it brings up with it. I just want it just a little more stretched out, but I know I'm asking a lot from a PS2 game. Next up, we've got everyone's favorite dog they want to adopt / steal. I can't believe, like, when you think about in the world that Koromaru was just, like, some stray dog that no one had, like, yet to, like, just immediately kidnap and, like, force to stay at their house all the time. Koromaru is great. Koromaru probably sets a bar too high that real dogs hope to achieve one day. Like, I want to meet someone who's like, no, dude, my dog is, like, Koromaru levels of cool. And I need to believe it, like, really, really badly. Koromaru is great. He's got just enough backstory to make sense why a dog would need to bark / awaken a persona. Don't think about it. He's got enough baggage to bring out a persona. Just don't think about it much more. He's a cool dog. Let him be a cool dog. Poor Ken. God, I love Ken. Ken is another really interesting taste of, like, something that we don't really see very much played with in a lot of, like, modern Persona games is really spreading out the age of, like, who you're hanging out with. We've had cases of, obviously, high schoolers hanging out with adults, but not as much cases of, like, hey, what would happen if someone awakened to a persona who's in grade school due to, like, incredible trauma or stress or, like, a big event happening in their life. And I think Ken's a really interesting one, too, because of especially how secretive he is before October, his relationship to not only Akihiko, but especially Shinji, and that kind of, like, weird dynamic they all have together without knowing it, because so much of it is just kind of one or two-way knowledge until it's too late. And watching him not only get over the guilt of what happened with his mother, but also just everything as a whole of his character, his choices, how do you move on, all of that while also still being in grade school is just such a lot of really what's going on. And I think Ken is just such a super cool, special character. Next up, shout out to Shinji. Everybody should love Shinji. I hope everybody loves Shinji. There's never enough time to spend with Shinji, is there? So, oh, by the way, if you love Shinji and haven't played Portable, you should check out that FemC route. There might be what some call the best true ending in the whole series in that route. I'm just saying out there. Shinjiro is like... Shinjiro, without getting into any spoilers, has a lot of moments that really get at me. And they're actually not like the obvious ones you kind of think of. The two big moments for me are... After the large event in October, there's what you basically kind of view as a small side quest of basically, let's get this bum back to school. Because there's this promise they made, Akihiko, Mitsuru, and Shinji, all when they started as freshmen, to graduate together, live their lives, prosper, and basically like be that trio together. And you're just kind of basically being the middleman of helping get this letter to Shinji so he can go back to school and keep their promise together. And the ending of that hurts so much more than it should. Going back and like finishing that hurts a lot. But then like the other one, which I was not expecting, was the moment at the final boss fight where he's like the last line in it to help motivate you through that final battle. It like hit me, so I was like welling up like a total baby. Yeah.
When you had to go to his room.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. The room broke me, man. Like talking to Mitsuru as well. It's rough with it. Yes.
I love the fact that all like the social links you write are like giving you like inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
But like the Shinji part, they don't show his picture. You just hear his voice line.
Yes.
Well, that's what got me.
Mm-hmm. Also, big shout outs to being mean and making me want to cry is on the final day at the end of the game when they are trying to remember, oh, hey, who are these people hanging out with Mitsuru and Akihiko and everything? Like, who's this weirdo? Why don't we remember this handsome man with the beanie? That also hurts for so many reasons. Next up, we've got Strega, one of the many protagonists with it. But, I mean, I think also one of the cool things, like, we don't get a lot of very traditional villains in Persona games outside of like obviously the memes like Hitler and like gas station attendant. So Strega's really interesting of like they're not the main villain, but they're an interesting force that keeps projecting through the entirety of it. Obviously there are many moments you're yelling at the screen of like, just kill them, please kill them. You're really making everyone's life. Do you see how much garbage is in the town square because of these hippies? This guy can't even afford a shirt and he started a cult. Like, this dude is basically really unhinged Japanese Andrew Tate. We need to not let this happen. Yeah, with I understand that his gun is a real gun, but the fact that it's also not an evoker seems really inefficient. Tiny little thing. Also, I always forget that Jen is basically a YouTuber before being a YouTuber was a thing, and I need to know what this weirdo was putting out there online. Like, I can only imagine he was putting out like weird conspiracy theories, but like exclusively like American ones. He's like, guys, the Japanese audience needs to know about 9/11. You guys don't understand. There were 2 towers, and these steel beams should not have melted at this rate. It was 100. Like, that's the only thing I could. He's got bombs. He's got to just be a psychopath, like conspiracy theorist. And then we've got this beautiful soul of just basically being like, if you ever wondered what can happen if you ever wondered what happens if you ask out that hot gothic Lolita chick at the Hot Topic store, this is the best case scenario and will 100% never happen in real life. Unless you are Junpei. Next up, just a couple of highlight moments I wanted to throw in here because I know we are going long. Big shout-outs to Operation Babe Hunt being there and still making me cringe greatly. We're a show of yays or boos. How did we feel about the change? Speaking of psycho conspiracy theorists, how do we feel about the crazy chick at the beach? It's all weird. It's all weird. All the weird choices for it. Another big shout out. I really loved the trip. This I guess like what would it just be the fall trip? It's not really like there's summer. These kids, by the way, go on a lot of trips. Like there's a lot of money going around at Naka Kon. And also like some weird like scarf boy. I'm sure he has some importance to the story, but God only knows. If you ever wondered what like. If you ever wondered what the handsomer version of yourself would be like if he became a sentient being, it's just Ryoji. Although why he hits on everybody, I don't know. But like, I guess that just means deep down, like the protagonist is probably also super thirsty but too quiet to do anything. I mean, to be fair, that is true because like. Let's be honest. Every time you hook up with multiple people or even make multiple romantic relationships, like, just thought I'd like to remind you, you already have a special person in your life. It doesn't matter. Max rank. They're not going to find out. It's good. There's no punishment. Well, there's a punishment, but it's called the ending of the journey. That's your punishment. If you ever wondered what happens when you have 9 girlfriends at the age of 17, the end of Persona 3 is the answer. So we're going to speed run through this because I know we got to start wrapping up. We've got the expansion pass coming out. Very uncontroversial, I'm sure. Atlas is remaking The Answer from Fez, and they wrapped it up into a season pass. Show of hands, who's actually excited to play this when it comes out this fall? Make a series of noises. What noise left your body when you found out you'd have to pay another $35 for this DLC? I'm gonna be honest. I also did not care. Yeah, you in the back. Oh, sorry. You in the back. Great point. Well, it's Game Pass Ultimate, but yes, if you are playing this on Xbox, it's not you have to be an active member. You could literally sign up for a month for like $10 or $15, claim this, and you get it for free and can play it then when it comes out later. But obviously you have to be playing it on either PC, Game Pass Store version, or Xbox. Yes?
I'm just saying, I feel like if I were to care that the answer costs $35, I would get each because I buy Nintendo games for $60.
Oh no, yeah, like I'm actually one of the defenders of like I think the way they went about it definitely was not great for it, but I don't know anyone who bought Persona 3 Reload for $70 and went, just didn't feel like enough value. Like, there's a lot of game in this.
I bought the Ice Edition. I'm still going to buy it.
Oh yeah. Also, who else besides me and him up here? Who bought the $200 collector's edition? Yeah. We're the problem. What was that?
Why does the Ice Edition not come with episode Ice? Yeah.
Great question. It is funny because it does literally come with all DLC except episode Aegis. Oh, yeah.
You're going to want to listen to stories.
took my baggage and gave it to someone else. I had to leave my apartment and go to the other side to pick up that box before they could notice that it was sitting there. I don't want them taking my shit. I needed that ice.
Listen, dude, listen. Porch pirates are desperate for very, very tiny and detailed Iga statues. So we've got a couple of screenshots real quick we're going to blow through. But if you played the answer or if you have not, I am excited because there's a lot of interesting concepts in the answer, but there's a lot of really, really boring bloat. But there's a cool story there that I am excited to see get hopefully fully realized. We're going to have to wait till September to check it out. But I am excited. Also, again, more Igus is never a bad thing, especially kind of going back to my complaints with the protagonist. She is very much a vocal character. Like, you do not have to then play as a silent Igus. But yes, we're wrapping up. I want to just first off say thank you guys all so much for not only coming here so late, but also for sitting through my bad takes for at least an hour. That was a lot for you guys. Like I mentioned though before, I do this as a weekly thing. It's a Atlas, SMT, and Persona community podcasting, whatever. We're on like Discord, YouTube, Twitter, blah blah blah, whatever. Basically, if you look up Shin Megami Tensei Network, just about anywhere, you'll find it. But thank you all so much for coming. Also, try not to think too hard about the fact that I put the bad ending as this and just had her as a microphone. Listen, I'm just saying I knew karaoke was coming after. It's not my fault that the world ends after Yukari sings karaoke. Thank you all so much. But yes, thank you guys so much for coming and enjoying the dumb Persona 3 memes. They will never not get old.